Hi there, I'm Andrew, you're watching ThatGamerAjax, and welcome back to the Emberwind Class Guide series, where today we are going to be talking about the Commanders. Now, Commanders are the type of class that can wade into the battlefield and are equal parts both brain and brawn, and they really focus on tactics and rule manipulation, so really these are the classes that can look at the rules and say that they're more guidelines more than anything. Now, the three classes that are considered to be commanders are the Atlanta, which is almost like a paladin, the Spiritualist, which is a little bit like a warlock, and a Tactician, which is really just kind of its own thing more than anything. Now, just a quick disclaimer before we get into these class guides, due to the overall flexible nature of Emberwind and the encouragement to, kind of play the game your way and, make a build that works for you, these are going to be more of my suggestions when it comes to what equipment you should be looking at and what stats you should be trying to boost. So let's go ahead and dive right in and start with the Atlanta. Now, the Atlanta feels kind of like it's equal parts both Paladin and Bard because it focuses on kind of being a strong frontline tank class that has a lot of very helpful auras for your allies that can do a wide variety of things between healing, helping allies move faster. It can also influence the rolls of those around it. If somebody rolls and they just are going to miss, you can alter that roll a little bit lower so that way your ally is going to actually hit the mark that you want to go for. Or if an enemy rolls, you can actually make that higher so they have a greater chance of missing your ally. This even applies to damage rolls, so that way you can help an ally get even more for their money. Now, of the classes that I've looked over in terms of Emberwind, I feel like the Atlanta is the definition of a defensive powerhouse. You want to build this class as tanky as possible, have a really high toughness score so that way you can resist physical damage better, or also go for a high resistance so that way you can absorb magic damage like it's nobody's business. Now, early on, it doesn't really seem like this is a class that has a whole lot of offensive options. However, it can still deal damage and then use that damage to apply different kinds of effects, such as knock an enemy prone, kind of like a battle master can do in Dungeons and Dragons. Or you can actually hit somebody and then transfer some health over to an ally if you're in the thick of a fight. Now, while the Atlanta is a very defensive class in nature, I would actually really recommend playing this as a very aggressive frontliner. You want to get in there, you want to start the fight, you want to be able to boost your allies that are alongside you. A lot of your abilities have a range of about 5 squares, so if you're playing D&D, this is the rough equivalent of about 25 feet. So if you're used to seeing how paladins work and the aura protections that they offer, imagine that, but better. When you're picking your skills for the Atlanta, you're going to want to try to increase your amplify limit. This is a class that really focuses on amplifying its abilities. You can sacrifice parts of your turn to get a greater effect. A quick example of this would be the Word of Comfort ability. Word of Comfort usually only heals for about a 1d10 and is going to cost a decent chunk of your turn to be able to do. However, if you sacrifice more of your turn to put more into this ability, it actually starts to increase the amount of healing by an additional 5. Especially at early levels, that is a whole lot of healing that you can provide to one ally. Now, when it comes to picking out the equipment and the gear for your Atlanta, I would really recommend going something along the lines of a one-handed weapon, whether that's a polearm or a sword, just that way you can have either a little bit more reach and you can hit enemies that are a little bit further away, or if you want to be a little bit more accurate, lean towards that sword variety. When it comes to an offhanded weapon, I would really recommend going either with a heavy or a medium shield. This increases your toughness and will make it so that way you can absorb a little bit more physical damage, or you're able to dodge a little bit better, meaning that enemies are going to have a little bit lower chance to hit you. Keeping along the lines of kind of building as tanky as possible, when it comes to picking your character's armor, I would really recommend that you go something along the lines of either heavy armor or robes if you feel like you're going to want either more physical protection if you're going to be like in the thick of a fight, or the robes provide better magical protection, meaning that you're able to absorb more spells that are usually cast at range. So really just kind of assess the situations that you think that you're going to be in the most and then pick from there. Now, let's move on over to the Spiritualist. The Spiritualist is the kind of Emberwind equivalent of having a warlock in your party. You make pacts with otherworldly spirits across the entire world of Axia that is currently set up, or in the homebrew world that you make for your players if you are going to be the game master for Emberwind. Now, unlike the other commanders that are available in the game, this is one of those classes that is all about risk reward, and you can use your health and body as a resource. Kind of dancing the fine line of life and death for both you and your party. Now, out of the commanders that are currently available in Emberwind, I feel like the Spiritualist is the one that really has the overall most flexibility in terms of the way that you can play this. Do you want to focus on kind of boosting your passive attacks and, play like a D&D Warlock, which focuses on Eldritch Blast? That's entirely possible. You can do it that way. Do you want to focus on stacking negative status effects, such as poison? You can do that. In fact, I had a player that had a lot of success by doing so. Or do you want to be more of a bursty spellcaster? That's another way that you can play this class. Or you can also play the Spiritualist as a 100% support character if you want, focusing instead on healing or taking a passability that's called Rebirth that allows you to revive an ally if they somehow manage to fall during a battle. The longer that you play a Spiritualist and the higher tier of play that you get, the more options kind of open up to you. When I was playing through, we had a tier 2 Spiritualist that focused on poison, had a lot of success, and was able to really kind of trip up enemies, so that you have a whole lot of options that are available to you. So this is one that I would really recommend if you're a player. Take the time to really explore those options and try a whole bunch of different things out. See what works for you. Now, because of how varied the Spiritualist can be in terms of the actions that it has available, this one's going to be a little bit trickier when it comes to building the character. For your main offensive skills, which are your critical, accuracy, and penetration, you can just refer to it as CAP for short, which you make every single turn, I would really recommend kind of boosting your accuracy and your penetration scores. When you penetrate an enemy's defenses, it means that they do not get to absorb any of that damage through their armor or their resistance. So this is going to allow you to start getting a lot more easy damage. If you decide to go kind of with that poison build, like what my player did, it's going to be doing a lot of piercing damage already, so you don't really need to worry about being able to crit. I'd really recommend using either a mace to boost your penetration score, which means you're going to be ignoring those defenses on a more regular basis, or a staff, which will make it so that way you can use spells more as think of like a bonus action in Dungeons & Dragons rather than a full action. This is also a class that has a passability that makes it so you can keep boosting that penetration score by losing health, and because we already mentioned that health is a resource for you playing a Spiritualist, you're able to really start getting that number up to a ridiculous amount. So anytime that you hit, you're going to ignore defenses. In terms of your defensive abilities, I would really recommend that you pick light armor with this class. It boosts your dodge chance, meaning that if an enemy does somehow manage to get to you, you're going to have a much easier time of being able to dodge that attack. And lastly, of the commanders, we have the Tactician. The Tactician, I feel, is a very unique class for Emberwind. This is the one that looks at the rules and kind of spits in its face because of the sheer amount of manipulation that you're able to do in terms of your allies' abilities and how their action economy works. If you are brand new to tabletop, would be a class that I might not recommend that you start with if you're playing Emberwind. Maybe try something that might be a little bit simpler, but once you get the hang of how this game works, the Tactician would be the right fit for any adventuring party out there. Now, the way that Emberwind works is that players get to pick their initiative. You don't roll for it like you do in Dungeons & Dragons or other tabletop games. So this is one that where you are in that initiative order is going to be very, very important. You get bonuses for either going first or going last. So there's really not much of an in-between on when you are going to want to go. If you go first, you can also keep boosting your allies that are going to be going a little bit later in the turn, and you can really maximize the overall damage output that your allies can do. Now, because this is also a class that has some of those mid-range abilities between 3 to 5 squares, your positioning is going to be incredibly important when you are moving around a battlefield. Make sure that your allies are still nearby and that you're kind of in the middle of them rather than being up in the thick of a fight. Of the commanders, I also feel like the Tactician is one that can really just go all-out offense if that is the way that you want to play. You have a ton of passive abilities and actions that you can take that are going to allow you to do an insane amount of damage, especially compared to the other commanders out there. Now, as I've mentioned before, I like playing classes a lot tankier, and I know that one of my players played a Tactician when we played through the Skies of Axia, and he had a lot of success by building a lot of physical defense. He tried to, intercept enemies more than anything, and he was really just staying close to his allies where he could. So what I would personally recommend would be going with a one-handed sword, which helps boost your accuracy. I know it's a very safe pick, but you want to focus more on hitting because you have a lot of things that amplify your damage already built into your kit. In terms of an offhand, I would actually recommend going a heavy shield if you feel like you need more physical defense, or a focus item if you feel like you need more magical resistance instead. In terms of your ranged weapon, well, really that's up to you. Do you want to focus more on trying to penetrate enemy defenses? Do you want to try to focus on hitting more? Really, I would do a toss-up between either a bow or a crossbow. When it comes to your armor, you're going to want to shore up the weaknesses that you might have in terms of your physical or magical resistance. So again, we're going to be running with either robes or heavy armor, depending on what you feel you're going to need more of. So in conclusion, the commanders might be a little bit more daunting, a little bit more intimidating at first, but they are a wonderful addition to any adventuring party in Emberwind. Because they focus a lot on rule manipulation and controlling a battlefield, this is one of the classes that I would highly recommend that you have a minimum of one in any party that your group puts together. So, which of the commanders seemed the most interesting to you? Personally, I lean towards the Atlanta. I like playing tanky healers. That's just always been my way of doing things. And if you try these out, let me know what builds you guys ended up using. I'm always interested to hear what other players are doing in terms of their tabletop games. So please comment below. If you like the video, don't forget to give it that thumbs up. And if you haven't already, maybe consider subscribing. We try to get videos out on a weekly basis, and we are your one-stop shop for guides, stories, tips, and tricks. And maybe we can help you find another tabletop game that you never heard about. But until next time, I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.
Thank you.